Hi, and welcome to the Banana Republican. I'm James Gorey. Let's do a kind of a Iran war update at the moment. Things going on, lots happening. As usual, things move fast in wartime, and it's moving fast now. So let's do a little update and just kind of see where we are. Um, Interestingly, yes, the U.S. is sending ground troops. That's not the first time there's ground troops in the Mideast. I think we have around 40 or 50,000 right now. So the extra 2,500 or so Marines and um, so forth, that will add to it. There is speculation on where they will go. It could be Karg Island, which is a major processing plant um, further up in the Gulf there, or it could be on the Straits of Hormuz. Likely Karg Island, probably. It's a smaller. It's about the 1/3 the size of Manhattan, so it's a small target. But we don't know. That may be the cover story. That may be the angle. We just have to wait and see. But on the cyber side of things, an Iran-linked cyber attacker, Handala Hack Team, I think they're called, they've issued a $50 million bounty on Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. So 50 million bucks to take either one of them out, that's a pretty big deal. That's not small change. And that's the same group that claimed responsibility for breaching the personal email account, or basically hacking FBI Director Kash Patel's personal account. So they know what they're doing. No question about it. They're good. They know what they're doing. But whether or not they get any takers on the 50 million, we'll have to see. It doesn't look like things are going to stop soon. And the reason I say that is because the war is escalating. The Houthis out of Yemen, which is the bottom end of the peninsula, the Arabian Peninsula, they've now officially come to the side of joined Iran, which they're sponsored by Iran. Why wouldn't they? But they've joined the war, so that's another front. So more missiles coming from there. Iran, meanwhile, is shooting missiles wherever it can, hitting UAE and Saudi Arabia and hitting Damascus, where some U.S. Troops are stationed. So, among other places, Iraq as well. So Iran's trying to widen the war, obviously, and the war is widening. Make no mistake about that. It is widening, and that's not good for anybody. But at the same time, it does have a certain um, eventuality about it, I would say. And by that I mean is this: Iran should have been defeated by now. The fact that they're not, that says a lot. That's the unspoken part. You have to ask yourself, well, what does it take to beat Iran? Trump has said, Iran should know when they're defeated. They're beaten, they're defeated, they have no air defense, they have virtually no army to speak of. They have no leadership. They've certainly decapitated several levels down. At the same time, Trump is saying he's talking to people over there. I would imagine it's probably some people in the army, some generals in the army, not the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. Those are like the SS troops of Nazi Germany. The Revolutionary Guard, they're going to be loyal to the mullahs as far as we can tell. But the army may be something different. So I have no doubt that Trump's talking to somebody over there. But there are a lot of questions, right? I mean, in other words, where are the Iranians in this? Why aren't there 30 or 50,000 machine guns being dropped off at the border, the remote border, and why aren't the Iranian young men who are grown up in Iran or the U.S. or wherever they are, or even just, why aren't we arming the Iranians? And they probably have an ally in the army, I would say, at least part of it. If reports are what they say they are, then there's a substantial part of the Iranian army that's not happy with what's going on, and quite frankly, they would have allies in other Iranians. So that's a question I have. Why aren't we just instead of sending American troops? Why don't we just say, look, let's do some clandestine drops? I mean, we can certainly do that. We can take out their people wherever they are. We can drop crates of weapons and let the Iranians sort it out. I don't know why we're not doing that. I wish we were. I think we should. And I think at the same time, the more people get involved, this is an obvious statement, the more other people get involved, the greater the risk is for a secondary, tertiary, other levels of integration escalation, I should say. So that's what's going on. In the meantime, Trump's saying he's going to unleash hell, and um, um, but yeah, he will. I'm sure he is. But again, where's Pahlavi? Where's the crown prince? He should be rallying people to bring and come back to Iran and bring them there and let them fight their fight. Let them win their freedom. I think they'd be welcomed. And yes, of course, there are 30, maybe 40 or 50,000 fewer Iranian patriots today than there were a month ago. The Islamic regime has found it very easy to just shoot their own people. So, and that's a pretty good indicator, if you can use that term. It's a pretty bad indicator that they're never going to go quietly. They have to be killed, I think. They're not just going to give up, because where are they going to go? They're going to go through trials or whatever, to be torn to pieces on the streets. So I don't see the Iranian Revolutionary Guard and that structural part of the Islamic regime, I don't see them giving up. Now, maybe some will, but I see a lot of them are going to fight to the death, and they have no qualms about killing their own people by the tens of thousands. Literally, mass murder on an industrial scale. We've already seen that. Meanwhile, the number of Iranians who died at the hands of U.S. and Israeli bombs and so forth is a couple thousand. Estimates are from 1,500 to 3,500, somewhere in there, which is a lot. But it pales in comparison to what the Iranian regime has done in a matter of days. I mean, there's some reports coming out from the Iranian health ministry. They were leaked. 40,000 people killed in over a weekend or over a 2 or 3 day period. That's just staggering. And that's one thing you're not hearing from the people protesting the war. They're not protesting the fact that 10 times the casualties have come from the Iranian regime itself, butchering, slaughtering its own people, defenseless people. And until the anti-Israel crowd, until the anti-US, anti-war crowd addresses that, they have zero credibility, at least with me anyway. So you don't get to do that. You don't get to ignore the deaths of tens of thousands of people and say, well, the only bad people are the Israelis for defending themselves and the U.S. I mean, look, you can't say death to Israel and be blowing them up and shooting them up and launching missiles at them for 25, 30 years, whatever it's been, and expect no consequences. And make no mistake about it, October 7th was an Iranian-backed proxy attack. People say, well, no, it was an inside job. Oh gosh, the Palestinians phoning home to their mom, was that an inside job? The videos of them taking young women on their bikes with blood on both sides of their trousers, on their motorcycles, and then disappearing into Gaza, was that an inside job? I don't think so. So the fact that this kind of brutality is sponsored by Iran, and now Iran's just getting pounded, that is their just reward, I think. But that said, the very fact that there are not Iranians being armed, the very fact that Pahlavi hasn't rallied, I don't know where he is, he's the crown prince, the son of the former Shah, the very fact that there aren't this massive Iranian uprising with arms is shocking to me and disturbing and disappointing. And that's a question I haven't seen addressed. I certainly haven't seen it answered. So that's another part of it. Now, here's the thing. The Pope has come across and said, look, he's an American Pope. Not that it matters, because it doesn't really. But he just come out and said, look, God doesn't hear the prayers of men who start wars. Well, you may ask yourself, you may say, well, the Iranians didn't start this war, but I think they probably did to a large extent. And again, they've been declaring war on Israel and the U.S. for decades. So they've been at war with Iran through their proxies for decades. So, yeah, they started the war. And I would just say that a couple of points regarding the Pope and the Catholic Church. I'm not Catholic. I don't harbor any ill will towards any Catholics whatsoever. But history is history. And the Catholic Church doesn't have a great history. They have a lot of problems throughout their history. They got rid of other Christians to become the church, and they hunted people down and they killed them and for memorizing the Bible, or the Waldensians. The Holy Roman Empire didn't just come about; it came about through conquest, and it came about through intrigue and politics and all the things that the worldly powers used. Now the church used it, and it wasn't all nice and pious and peaceful. Again, the Christians in the 12th century that rejected the I don't know, redemption for sale kind of transactional Christianity that the church that the Catholic Church was engaged in for centuries. That was a problem. And of course, Martin Luther in the 14th century, and then the Protestants and the wars against the Church and the Protestants. And then, of course, in the 20th century, the Nazis. There was an entente between the Catholic Church and the Nazis. So not a lot of great Catholic moments in history, if you look at it from that perspective. There are others that are good, but in terms of siding with the wrong side or being the aggressor or whatever, there's a lot to answer for there. So it's not all one way. And for the Pope to say, well, God doesn't hear the prayers of warriors, I would point the Pope to Deuteronomy 20. Several lines of verse there, but along the way it says, "For the Lord your God is he that goes with you to fight for you against your enemies to give you victory." Now that's talking to Israel. And so God is well aware that Israel has enemies to fight, always has, and up to now they have. So at some point they won't, but not at the moment. So I would point the Pope to Deuteronomy and kind of take his points from there. So whether or not you agree with what the U.S. is doing with Iran or to Iran, I think they had it coming. I think the world is a better place without a nuclear-armed, a ICBM-armed radical Islamic regime that's fighting wars through proxies on 4 continents. I think the world is better off without that. I don't think you can argue with that. If you do, then you have to say to yourself, well, the world is better off with Iran and without Israel and the U.S. And if that's your point, then good luck. And the reason I say good luck is because the reality is, Jews are a people created by God, initiated, whatever verb you want to use there. They're the progeny of their ancestors. For one, Abraham, and Abraham wasn't a Jew; he was a Gentile, son of an idol maker, as I understand it, and God made him a Jew. Whatever he did, he changed his name. I've talked about this before. He changed his name and instead of his wife Sarah to Sarah. So he made them and blessed them and said, look, you are my people for a certain purpose, and that purpose is to reveal myself, my nature, my laws, my plan for humanity, my plan for redemption. And you, Israel, are to be a light unto the world. That's in the Bible. So if you believe the Bible, then you understand where the Jews come from, and then you also understand that once God says He plants the Jewish people back in the land, they're not going away. So that's just the reality. And you've maybe heard that say that before, but that's the reality. That's the biblical reality. Now, the biblical reality is also that Iran and Turkey and Libya and probably Sudan, Russia, looks like, um, will participate in a massive invasion of Israel. So, without getting too much into the weeds, you can see these wars talked about in Jeremiah 49, Ezekiel 38, I believe. They're certainly there in Daniel, um, probably Zechariah as well. So, and I'm sure it's Revelation as well, I think, but certainly the Old Testament. And the reality is that one way or another, ancient Persia, which is Iran, Iran is ancient Persia. They changed their name in the 30s, I believe, 1930s. Um, they have another run at Israel. So whatever happens with this war, whether this war, comes to a conclusion sooner than later, or it very well could just keep going. And, I hate to say it, but maybe there isn't a, a decision by the Iranian people to rise up. Maybe they don't come. Maybe the regime hangs on in some way and things change. And they put this coalition together with Turkey and Russia and these other countries. The Ezekiel War has yet to happen. It's projected to happen. It says it'll happen, but it has yet to happen because Russia and Iran have never, Russia and Persia and Turkey have never been in a coalition throughout history, ever. So the very fact that they're now in a coalition now, and they are, they have military agreements and so forth. So it's very hard to argue that that won't happen. It's already partially there. So it may be that this is the beginning of that war, or maybe this war gets resolved, and then the second time it happens, and there's a different outcome. But the reality is that the Jews, the Israelis, aren't going to be pushed out of the land. Now, that's what Hamas wants. That's what Iran wants. That's what the left in this country wants, and some of the right. Let's be honest with you. So some of the right does too. They forget. They forget the Israelis and the Jews' claim to that land. They don't recognize it, or they try to mitigate it by saying, well, the Palestinians have their claim on it too. Well, there are no Palestinians. They're Egyptians and they're Syrians and so forth. So that's their lineage, okay? But that's where the war is. The war is getting wider. China and China's supplying them with missiles, and there's talk about, well, for the past month or so, supplying Iran with hypersonic missiles, very dangerous, anti-ship missiles. Iran has said we can sink those ships. They haven't used them yet, but that's a possibility. So we have the Houthis joining the war. We have the Pope condemning Trump and by extension Israel, saying that God doesn't hear them. I think the Pope needs to bone up on some of his Old Testament verses and understand eschatology a little more. It sounds like he doesn't have a real firm grasp of that, or it sounds like he has other political aims, which is another topic for another time. But that's where we are. We're potentially at World War III. Potentially. That's not breaking news, but we'll have to see what happens on this war. We'll have to see, will the Iranians push these people out, or will it be a kind of a transitional, but not transitional, some kind of way that the mullahs and the clerics and the radicals still make it through. I think that Trump and Netanyahu, I think they anticipated this being a 3 to 4 week war. I don't think they anticipated it being several months. I think from what I've read, it's been, well, we thought 4 to 6 weeks, maybe 8 weeks, but that's about it. And well, we're 1 month in, so what that remains to be seen. We'll have to see what happens. But at the end of the day, if this doesn't get resolved, the longer it goes on, the wider it grows, and that doesn't augur well for anybody, for the Iranians, for the Israelis, or for the U.S. and the economy and the gains we've made in terms of economic growth, in terms of jobs, in terms of the price of gas and so forth, that can all go away. And you could argue right now that some of it has gone away, because it has, at least temporarily. So we'll have to see. So that's where we are. I think we need to look at, well, we just watch and wait. Actually, you and I aren't going to do anything about it, but we can certainly pray about it, and we can certainly consult our Bible about it. And at the end of the day, we know that it's not Trump, it's not Netanyahu, it's certainly not the mullahs in Tehran that are running things. It's God running things. So God tells us how things work out. There are a few gaps along the way that we aren't aware of, at least that I'm not aware of. I'll speak for myself. So I have to try to infer and discern and fill in the blanks. But it's not really that important that we do, because they will be filled in anyway as we go. All right, that's it. I'll see you next time. Oh, by the way, if you like this content, subscribe, share, comment. Happy to hear from you. Take care.